Good morning everyone, Country Flyboy here, and today, another video in the tutorial series for the basics of Flight Simulator. Okay, as I put my watch on, it's just after 10 o'clock, so let's get somewhere. I think for this video, we're going to take off from Brunswick Golden Isles here, and we're going to head down south towards Jackson International. Now, I haven't picked that airport at random. I have picked that airport because it will allow us to depart a non-towered airfield outside of Tracon airspace and arrive at a towered airfield inside of Tracon airspace. And this video is all about air traffic control, so that would be perfect. You'll get to see pretty much all the things about it. Now we're going to be using default air traffic control for this video. There are other air traffic control things out there. There's add-ons as well as online ATC, but we're going to stick with default ATC because it's the one that you get with Flight Simulator. It's not perfect by any stretch of the means, but compared to the add-on ATC that I've tried, it's actually the best, at least in my opinion. Now, I will say I have modified my default ATC. I have a program called Edit Voice Pack that allows me to modify how ATC communicates with the aircraft, so it won't be 100% like default, but it will be enough to get us started. Alright, so first thing we need to do is go over the radio stack, but I'm going to get the aircraft started because if I turn the battery on and the avionics on and all that and don't have the engine running, the airplane's battery will eventually die. So just let me get the airplane started real quick. Beacon, mag, beacon. Alright. Alright, now the airplane is up and running. And I don't have to worry about the battery dying. We'll switch over to the radio stack. And I'm going to position the camera so we can get a good view of it. Okay, we're going to start from the top of the radio stack and work down. Let me get this. That's going to be in the way later, but oh well. Okay, so this is the radio stack you find in most airplanes in Flight Sim. The radios all work the same between the default airplanes in Flight Simulator. But this is the basic one. This is the Bendix King avionics set. And most default airplanes, if you push Shift 2, you'll get a radio stack pop-up, which is helpful. Alright, so I want to first turn your attention to two frequencies in Flight Simulator that are very useful. If you find that default ATC is annoying, and you want to fly around, say you're airborne, and you don't want to listen to them, because they can get annoying after a while if you're not talking to them, then tune your radio, whichever radio you have active, and you tune it to 123.45, and that is an unused frequency in Flight Simulator, at least in the United States. I think that's used as a CTAF frequency in other places of the world, but in the US, that's a unused frequency. In real life, it's commonly used as a advisory or a multicom frequency for en route areas, but or practice areas. But in Flight Sim, it's not used, so you can just tune it to that if you don't want to hear it. Another frequency is 121.5. Now, a note on 121.5. Yes, it's not used in Flight Simulator, but this is the guard frequency, which is actually the emergency frequency. So if you're flying online or with an ATC add-on, you definitely don't want to be using this frequency, because if you transmit on it, bad things can happen. You're only supposed to use this frequency if you have an emergency. So 123.45 will probably be the best. So just a note on that, there's an unused frequency if ATC gets annoying for you. Alright. Starting from the top of the radio stack and working down, we have the OMI lights right here. Now these are used on ILS approaches, so they're actually more of an instrument flying thing, We're not really going to go over them, but I'm just going to state you may see them light up at some point in this video, and they just give you position information when doing an ILS approach. Alright, the next part down is the audio panel, and you can see we can light up different things on the audio panel. Okay, so the audio panel lets you select which radio you're transmitting, receiving, and hearing. So, let's start with the nav radios on this one. Nav 1, Nav 2, marker, DME, and ADF. These are all the audios for them. Now basically, navigation beacons on the ground that you tune with these radios will transmit a Morse code identifier, and you listen for that identifier, and that's how you know if you would have the right radio station, because it'll have the Morse code printed next to the frequency on the chart, so you just have to compare it. And this is how you hear that audio. So if I tune Nav 1 to a VOR and I want to make sure it's the right one, I'll have to listen to the Nav 1 audio, wait for the Morse code to play. Now, the COM radios are a bit different in that you can select, the green one shows which one you're transmitting and receiving on, unless this one is set up. So basically, COM 1's lit up now, and that means I am both transmitting and receiving on COM 1. If I push COM 2, then I'm transmitting and receiving on COM 2. Now the both thing, if I hit both, that allows me to transmit on COM 1, but receive on both COM 1 and COM 2. So basically, when both is lit up, you can assume that you are receiving on both radios, but only transmitting on the one you have selected. So here I'm transmitting COM 2, receiving COM 1 and 2, transmitting COM 1, receiving COM 1 and 2. And there it's just, when that's not on, this shows what you're transmitting and receiving on. Moving down, we have the COM nav radios. Now, this is the actual COM 1, COM 2, Nav 1, and Nav 2. So, if you look at COM 1, we see we're on 123.45. If we want to set a frequency, we hover our mouse either over the number or over the knob here. I recommend over the number when you're looking straight at the panel or using the 2D panel here. But if you're using standard VC, you can actually, it's easier to actually click the knob. Don't make a liar out of me. There you go. See? So hover my mouse over the knob and I'm using the scroll wheel to select frequencies. Now you also, wrong one. Also notice that when I hover my mouse in certain places, a plus or minus symbol appears. So basically, it's on 126.67 now. If I hover my mouse over the first part of the decimal number, 126, if I hold it to the right, I can increase that frequency with the plus sign, or to the left, decrease that frequency with the minus sign by clicking. Hear that? And it's the same with the decimal. To the left of the decimal decreases, right of the decimal increases. Now you also seen you can use the scroll wheel to select frequencies too. Now you can only change the frequency in the standby. Note you have two. You have the active on the left and the standby on the right. The way it works is you set your frequency in the standby radio and then hit this arrow key to switch them over, so that your standby becomes your active and active becomes standby. Then you can change the frequency again. Now that works the same throughout each one. COM 2 is the exact same. Nav 1 and Nav 2, however, are the same but different. You select the frequencies the same, but it's not the same frequency band. This is for the navigation radios, which we actually will go over a little later. Alrighty, next part down we have the ADF, which is another form of navigation radio. This is an AM radio actually, so yeah, we use AM radios for navigation sometimes in aviation. So basically you select an AM frequency here, and then this gauge here will point at that frequency whenever you're in range. So it points at the station basically, and that's one way to navigate. So any AM radio can be used and selected there. Now this next part, DME, ties in with the navigation radios we saw up here. Some of those ground radio stations that we tune for navigation will have what's called DME, or distance measuring equipment. Now what that is when we're within range of it, it will tell us our distance to the station, or distance from the station, and our ground speed, how fast we're moving across the ground. So we'll see this when we get airborne, but on the left will be the distance from the station, and on the right will be the ground speed. There's only one switch you can mess with on this one, and that's the R1, R2 switch. That just selects which radio you're using. Right now it's on radio 1. If I wanted to know the distance information for radio 2, then I would switch it. That basically selects nav 1 or nav 2 is what that does. Now down here we have the transponder. This is the magical box that talks to the air traffic control radar. So we'll see this later, but when we get airborne and we talk to ATC, they're going to give us what's called a squawk code, which is a 4-digit code using the numbers 0 through 7. And yeah, we would set this code in here. Now there are some squawk codes you need to be familiar with. What this does is it relays our altitude and some other information to the air traffic control radar. So when we're flying and we're not talking to anybody, we need to be what's on the VFR squawk, 1200 in the US or 7000 in Europe. Now there are some other squawk codes to be familiar with, mostly the 3 emergencies and 1 extra. 7700, that's the general emergency squawk. So if you tune this one, then you're gonna start flashing red on the controller's radar screen, and that lets him know you have some kind of emergency. 7600, that's the lost communication squawk. Squawking this will let air traffic control know that you either cannot hear them or cannot talk to them, or both. And that's what that is. That's if you have radio failure at some point during your flight. And lastly is the 7500 squawk. Now this squawk code you never ever want to transmit online or offline, because this one here is the hijack squawk. So if terrorists run in, hold a gun to your head and say fly me somewhere, when they're not looking, you need to squawk this. Now there's another transponder code no one really thinks about, and that is 0000, quad 0. This is a military high-speed squawk. You'll see military planes traveling along the military training routes or on intercept missions will squawk this. Basically, this lets the air traffic control know that the aircraft's going to be moving at high speed. Now, if you ever want to return to VFR squawk, see this button down here that says VFR? Just click it, and it will returns you to the default VFR squawk code, which is 1200. Now, as you saw, I was setting the frequency with these buttons down here. 3, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. The way that works is, if you want to set a frequency, let's take us back to the VFR squawk. When you first click the number, you have a few seconds to click the rest of the numbers before it resets to the previous code. So, if I want 1, 2, 0, but then don't set the other one, you see it goes right back to the old frequency. Now you can also set the transponder code by hovering your mouse over the number itself, and hovering it over the top of the number will increase it with the scroll wheel or with clicking. And it's just like the radios up there, holding at the bottom decreases, or you can use the scroll wheel. Now, this last part of the radio, this last part of the radio down here is actually not a radio. That is the autopilot. We may use that on this video. I don't know. It can be a bit of a boring flight sometimes. Alrighty, so we've gone over the radios. Let's get started. Now, we're going to be going to another airport that's a decent distance away from here. And when we're doing that, it may be helpful to let air traffic control know where we're going. So to do that, we need to file a flight plan. Now you can file a flight plan from the main menu in Flight Simulator, or you can do it from inside the simulator. If you bring up the Alt menu by pushing the Alt key and then go to Flights, Flight Planner. Now I'm not going to click on it yet because Fraps will not pick it up. But basically when the Flight Planner shows up, it'll be the default Flight Planner. You have the option of building a flight plan there. You also have the option of loading a flight plan, so you can save these flight plans, and they're saved in the PLN file format. Now you can also reload these later if you want to reuse them, or you can have another program, say Plan G for example. They can save files as a PLN, so you can build a flight plan from an external program and then import it to Flight Simulator by clicking the load button in the flight planner. So I wish Fraps would pick it up. Unfortunately it won't, so I'm gonna turn Fraps off real quick. File me a quick flight plan down to Jacksonville. Just know that it's a pretty simple flight planner to use. It's not the best in the world, but it'll get you there. So real quick, I'm gonna file a VFR flight plan with Flight Simulator. That's important. I'm using a VFR flight plan. VFR basically just lets air traffic control that I'm going to be going between these two airports. Now IFR on the other hand is different. IFR is where air traffic control, you get the most out of air traffic control with IFR. We're not going to worry about IFR today. You're going to hear some planes on the radio though that will be flying IFR flight plans. So be ready for that, but yeah, we're worried with VFR right now, not IFR. That's not a basic topic. IFR requires a bit of advanced stuff. So real quick, I'm going to file a flight plan. Alright, the flight plan is filed. We'll be cruising at 4,500. I'm going to go ahead and set that in the autopilot window. Just know you can set the altitude down here. You don't have to use the autopilot though. You could just use it as a reminder. So now ATC is aware that we will be flying between Brunswick Golden Isles and Jackson International. Alright, now we got about an hour before the airliner shows up here. There's 3 flights a day out of Atlanta to this airport, and I want to get out of here before they arrive, so I don't want to be in the pattern with an RJ. So I'm going to release the brakes and we're just going to taxi forward. Now I'm not going to taxi to the runway yet. I'm just going to taxi out of the parking area. Clear on that side. And clear on that side. Ooh, you were close. Oh look, a citation in that hangar. Alrighty, I'm out of the parking area now, safely away from other airplanes. So real quick, we're going to tune the local frequency here at Brunswick Golden Isles. Now this is an untowered airfield, meaning there's no air traffic control tower to direct the planes and keep them separated. However, we still use the radio in this situation. Airports have a CTAF frequency, commonly known as advisory, and we will tune that. So you can see I brought the ATC window, and you can see it shows the frequencies in this area. Now ATC, the default ATC will only show the frequencies that you need to worry about at the given time that you're in. So right now the only frequencies we need to worry about are Brunswick traffic and Brunswick weather. So real quick, I'm going to tune 122.8 into the COM 1. Okay, so you can see it give us options. We can select the takeoff runway. Now I'm going to do something else. I'm going to switch over to COM 2, and you can see when I did that, it sees I'm no longer on the frequency, so it gives me the option to retune. Now I'm going to use the auto tune feature to tune the weather in here in Brunswick. So to do that, you can see how it says in brackets, tune BQK automated weather 124.175. If I click that, it will automatically send that frequency to whichever radio I'm currently using. See, I'm using COM 2, so it's going to send it to COM 2, and it will make it active. So that's a useful feature.
Kilo, Bravo, Quebec, Kilo, automated weather observation, 1521 Zulu. Wind, calm. Visibility, greater than 20 miles. Sky condition, clear. Temperature, 15 Celsius. Dew point, 5 Celsius. Altimeter, 2. Niner, 2.
Alright, you just heard was the Brunswick Golden Isles automated weather observation system. I don't see the system here. On the ground, there's actually an automated system at most airports that will transmit the radio, or transmits on the radio, not a recording, but an automated voice telling you what the weather is at the last observation. So it gave us a time at the beginning of that transmission that was when the radio, or that was when the broadcast was, or the forecast was made, or the observation, I should say. The weather observation was made at that time, and it rebroadcast it on repeat until a new one is made. So that lets us know the weather. And particularly, we need to worry about the wind direction and the altimeter setting. Now, the winds are calm today, so we could use any runway we want. I'm going to switch us back over to CTAF. We're going to select runway 7 just because it's closer. And we have a shorter taxi. So we've selected runway 7. You saw how I did that. I just picked the runway from the list. I want runway 7. And now I can announce my taxi.
Golden Isle traffic, Cessna November 176 Charlie Mike is taxiing to runway 7.
Now what I did there was I let any other airplanes that are on this frequency know where I'm at and what I'm doing. So basically, any airplanes operating here now know that I'm going to taxi to runway 7. Now, it's important to note that nearby uncontrolled airfields will typically share a frequency.
Victor Delta India traffic citation November 5176 Papa is 11 miles southeast inbound visual runway 31.
That couldn't have been better if I had timed it. So what we just heard there was another airplane at another airport, but the airport's advisory frequency happens to be the same as this one's. So, yeah, we heard him there. He's not at this airport, so we don't have to worry about him. Now, as we come up to the runway, I'm going to look, and I don't see any airplanes on final within 10 miles. So we should be able to take off once we get there. I'm going to go ahead and turn the landing and strobe lights on. I'm just going to look behind me and note there's no airplanes coming in to land on the other runway, and nobody's on the runway. So we can take off just as soon as we get over here. Alright, so here's runway 7. We're ready for takeoff. I'm going to announce that takeoff. So this is going to let the airplanes operating here know that I am taking off. Now, I also need to state that I'm going to be departing. If I wanted, so I have a few options. If I wanted to just stay in the traffic pattern, like we did in the second video, then I would select option 4, remain in pattern. That lets all the planes know that I'm going to be doing touch and go landings on this runway. If I wanted to depart the airfield, I need to say so. I have the option to depart straight out, in which case I'll just fly runway heading out, or I can depart, take off, turn to the north, south, east, or west, and I need to let the airplanes know I'm going to be departing some direction. I'm going to be departing to the south in this case, so let's let them know. Now, you can click these options in the ATC window, or you can also use your number bar at the top of your keyboard, your number bar, not the number pad, and I will select option 7, so I'll put the 7 key, and that was departure to the south.
Golden Isle traffic, Cessna November 176 Charlie Mike taking off runway 7, departure to the south. Kilo Victor Delta India traffic.
Now, the key I'm using to display and hide the ATC window, there's 2 of them. I believe scroll lock is 1, but I believe I've disabled that on my simulator and I use scroll lock for something else. But the tilde key, the little key with the squiggly line to the right of the number 1 on the number bar, that is the default key to bring up the ATC window. Alright, so we're going to go ahead, give it full power, and take off runway 7. And we're going to do the standard departure to the south. I'll show you how to do this. So when you're departing fields like this, you always want to fly the standard way. That way it's predictable. Other airplanes will know what you're doing. That way you can keep your radio transmissions short, sweet, and to the point, and other airplanes will just know you're going to be doing something because you'll be following the standard rules. That's how default AI works as well. Now keep in mind everything in this video is concerning flying in the US. I am not familiar with flying in other countries. The rules are different from country to country, but the US is where I'm from, that's what I know. Speak of the devil. What we just heard is AC 5503. He is an RJ, a CRJ, either 200 or 700, heading to Memphis. Now that is an airliner. We don't want to be an asshole and delay them, so I'm going to set flaps 20. I'm going to head straight for the runway. Because he can't take off until we've landed and cleared the runway, so we don't want to delay him too much. Don't want to be a dick, you know. And you can see he just popped in right there. I think he's the CRJ 200. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, so just head straight for the runway. Even if we're not lined up with it, we're trying to get there quickly, so it's okay. Now if you look at this ramp right here, that's the Jacksonville Air National Guard ramp, and you can see there's several F-15s parked on the ground there, as well as a C-130. I don't see, looks like there's 3 or 4 of them missing, so there may actually be some F-15s out flying around right now. Alright, coming in, we'll go ahead and set flaps full. Now, these big international airports like this, your goal is to land and get off the runway as fast as possible. And then the taxiway turnoffs tend to be spaced out pretty distance because they're designed for jet planes. So we kind of want to be precise with our landing. We want to land somewhere inside the touchdown zone and exit on that first taxiway there. There's that CRJ, we're passing by. Let's put on a good landing for him. Don't make a fool out of ourselves, he's watching us. No pilot can resist watching another airplane land. So you can bet the 2 pilots in that plane are watching us. And we gave them a decent landing. Alright, so we're going to want to exit on this first taxiway here. We get off the runway as soon as possible so we don't get in the way of planes behind us. This is taxiway Juliet. That way I'm sure he wants to go ahead and get to Memphis.
Cessna 6 Charlie Mike, contact ground on 121.9er. DC 5503 cleared for takeoff.
Oh, lights off.
Service wind call. Cleared for takeoff, runway 8, DC 5503. 121.9er, Cessna 6 Charlie Mike.
Alright, real quick, let's watch this CRJ 200 take off. Alright, so we're clear of the runway, we're just going to watch him take off. I think it's 200, might be an Embraer actually. See those landing lights of his on. Just cut on his strobes. Alright, all you kids watching at home that just started flight simming, don't worry, you'll get to the CRJ 200 one day. Even one day, even you will be able to fly the passengers across the airways. There he goes. It is the CRJ 200. And he's airborne. Look how steep the jets climb.
Contact Jacksonville departure on 123.
And see, he just got told to contact departure.
123.8,
So now he's switching over to departure control, the frequency we were on before. And departure is going to give him radar vectors out of the area and en route. Alrighty, so here we go. We need to contact ground control, and we're going to request taxi to the northeast ramp.
Jacksonville ground, Cessna November 176 Charlie Mike, taxi to northeast parking. Cessna November 176 Charlie Mike, taxi to parking using taxiway Juliet Alpha Hotel Bravo Golf 1. Taxiing to parking using taxiway Juliet Alpha Hotel Bravo Golf 1, Cessna 6 Charlie Mike.
Now you guys watching at home are like, okay, what the fuck? Okay, ground control just told us to taxi to northeast parking via a set of taxiways. So just like in the air, ground control is going to be separating aircraft on the ground, making sure they don't run into one another. So they give them taxiway assignments. They want them to go to the ramp via certain taxiways. If you don't know what your taxiway layout at the airport is, then you can actually click this little button here, turn on progressive taxi, and it will draw a line along the taxiways air traffic control told you to take to the ramp and the parking spot they want you to go to. Now, default ATC will assign you a parking spot whenever you request taxi in, so you have to go to the parking spot they direct you to. You can't just pick one. In real life, they would just tell you to go to a ramp, and then the marshalers on the ramp would direct you to a parking spot. Now, as for knowing which ramp is where, well, there really is no way to know that with default flight sim. You just have to pick a parking spot or pick a ramp and hope it's in the area you want to go to. But you can see they're sort of oriented by direction. So if you look as we taxi along here, if I go to top-down view, and I believe, yes, top-down view is north-oriented right now, we requested taxi to northeast, so you can assume one of these ramps over here is the northeast ramp. I can tell you right now from experience, it's that one right there. Alright, so let's look around and see what we can see as we taxi in. So there's general aviation ramp over there where we're heading. There's the fire station. Terminal over there, I see a Delta 757 and a Delta MD-80. And another Delta, probably a CRJ or an Embraer. Cargo ramp is on, you can't see it from here, but it's on the other side of the terminal. Back there is the air guard ramp with the F-15s. Okay, so we're going to turn right here. Yeah, right now it's the slow hour at Jackson International, but usually at these international airports, they tend to slow down around lunchtime and pick back up after. So if we, now, I like the way the air traffic control and the AI is in Flight Simulator. If we sit here and just watch the traffic, those planes over there at the terminal will eventually push back and head to somewhere. So you can actually just imagine there's little people in the terminal right now getting on and off their airplanes. Now, in case you're wondering, no, Flight Simulator does not come, there's another airplane landing, does not come with realistic AI traffic. It comes with AI traffic, but it's fictional airliners. World Travel Airlines, Orbit Airlines, those are not real airlines, they're entirely fictional. Microsoft made them up because Microsoft's a big company, and they didn't want to go through the headache of having to license real airliners. So the airliners you see before you are real airliners, however, not the default fake ones. And that's because I'm using an air traffic add-on. I'm using Ultimate Traffic 2. You can see there's another Cessna there, and a King Air parked over there at the ramp as well. Looks like we're going to be parking next to that King Air. Now you just heard a US Air flight request taxi out. So when we get over here, when I get straightened up, I'll go back to top-down view, see if we can't find him. He would have been on the other side of the terminal. So yeah, you can see this plane over here taxiing out. That's that US Air flight that just requested taxi. And you can see the cargo ramp over here. Looks like there's one airplane parked there. And a plane just landed. Looks like a Learjet. Or some small jet. Maybe a King Air. Saw him while he was airborne. He was fast, so I'm assuming he's a jet. We'll hear him request taxi in a second.
Jacksonville ground, beach November 868 Echo Tango, request taxi to the gate. Beach November 868 Echo Tango, taxi to the gate.
Well, it's a Beach King Air. We had that answer for us. He requested taxi to the gate for some reason.
Using taxiway Juliet, beach 8 Echo Tango.
Alright, so I can see our parking spot is the one right by that hangar on the other side of the King Air, so I'll just turn off progressive taxi now. Over here at the signature flight support ramp. Alright, so to park an airplane in Flight Simulator, we just, it's helpful if you do it from an external view. We want to keep our nose wheel on the center line as we do this, and we just want to slowly bring the plane forward. Don't go too fast. And you want to line up so that your rear wheels are over that T formed by the center line there. So our main gear needs to go over it. Right about there. And once we are in position, we will set the parking brake. And shut the plane down. So, avionics, lights, mixture. Prop has stopped. Magnetos, lights, master battery. Alright, the plane is shut down. We can open the door, get out, and kiss the ground. And that was my video on the basics of default ATC. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.